Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's been a little bit since I've done a overview of my pedal board. In fact, the last one I think I did was about 5 to 6 months ago, maybe at the beginning of 2024. So here we are in July, and I've definitely made some changes to my board. Now, if you've seen a few of my other videos, the changes have been in those videos, but I haven't really talked about the board overall. And so that is the point of today's video. I'm not gonna be diving too deep into what every single pedal does. I've actually done some longer videos on an individual pedal. So if you're interested in some of those, go check out those videos. But really what I wanna do is give a status update of the condition of the board, what's on it, and maybe a little bit of how I'm using some of the stuff. So let's jump in. For the signal chain today, I'm going to be going from my guitar, which is a MIJ Telecaster, into the board, and then out of the board into my Apollo interface into Ableton Live behind me to record. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the signal chain pedal to pedal. So the first thing my guitar sees is the tuner. So I'm using the Peterson strobe tuner. Really been loving it because the big screen makes it super easy to tell where I'm at. So nothing crazy special. It's a tuner. Tells you if you're in tune or not. From the tuner, I go into my Kali 76 compressor. That's a newer addition to this board. I previously had the Jackson Audio Bloom, but lately I've had this on there and it's been the best. So from the Kali 76 compressor, we go into my overdrive section, which consists of the Vertex steel string, the Cornerstone Nero, and the Brown Amplification Protein. Now, the order that I just said that doesn't matter because I don't stack them, kind of. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there, but nonetheless, that's the overdrive stage. Then out of that, we go into the volume pedal, which I'm using the Dunlop Mini Volume. And I like to run my volume pedal after my overdrive. I know some folks like it before, but mine is after my overdrive section. Then we go into a modulation, which I'm using the H94. So that's handling chorus, tremolo, vibrato, those sorts of things. And then out of there, we go into my timeline delay and then into the BigSky. And after that, we go into the two, what are they called again? Tonex 1s. I wanted to say mini Tonexes, but yes, the Tonex 1s. And I'm running a Morgan AC20 on one side and then a 2-Rock clearer reverb. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's that Fender clean sound. I'll put the name up. And all of that is being controlled with the Morningstar MC6. Now, I'm a always on compressor type of guy, so here is my clean tone with the Kali 76 on. And that had a little bit of reverb from the BigSky as well. But that is the basis of my tone. Now, before we get too deep into the board, I want to talk about the Vertex steel string. Previously, this has kind of been an auxiliary spot for me where my other overdrives kind of stayed consistent and I just would kind of swap things in and out that I was trying, you know, or if I wanted a different flavor of overdrive, that was kind of the spot. And so recently and currently, I'm trying to enhance my bass tone, if I could put it that way, kind of put a little sweetener on it. I love my bass tone, what I'm getting from those 2 amps and the Tonex 1s, but I just want it just a little more oomph, you know, a little more something there that's a little different maybe if you were running the same exact amp, same exact compressor, right? Let's just hear a little bit of that. Here is my clean tone, again, just Kali 76, some light reverb. And now if I turn on the steel string, so it's a little hard to tell, I know, but that's the point. It's a little subtle, but I'm definitely feeling while I'm playing it. It's maybe giving a little bit more hair, almost like if you were pushing an amp just a little bit. I know some folks maybe might use like a boost pedal. I guess that might be a good way to think about it, is I'm kind of using it like a boost pedal to just enhance my bass sound. And so I'm really liking what it's doing for that. So here it is again without it. out with it. So hopefully you can hear that. Just enhances my bass tone just a little bit, and so I really like just having that as a starting point and then going from there. So from here on out, any overdrive or any signal that you hear is gonna have that Vertex steel string always on, kind of like my compressor, just always on. So now my first true overdrive is the Protein, and I'm using them individually. So the blue side by itself, the green side by itself. I do have my Midi baby set up to control all of this, and there is a looper underneath, which is where my overdrives are plugged into. So I have the option to stack both the blue and the green side when it comes to the Protein, but most of the time I run them just by themselves. If I feel I need a little more oomph, even though I don't usually stack, I do have the Midi baby program to stack, and I'll show you that. So here's my bass tone again. And now with the blue side of the Protein. So you can hear that the blue side, I have it set pretty tame, a little bit of breakup, gives a little more hair, a little more push to what I'm doing. So nothing too crazy. I'm not gonna be popping off any huge lead lines with it, but if I'm looking for just a little more, maybe I'm strumming some chords, especially once you got delay and reverb on, I think it sounds really nice. So here it is with delay and reverb as I would maybe play it in a song. So moving on, I have the green side of the Protein. That's what I'm using as kind of my stage 2 drive. Whenever I need to push a section more, maybe do a little bit of lead line work here that really stands out, I push this on. So here's what that sounds like. Lots more drive there. Really like it, again, to push a section, do some lean lines with that, but not quite into solo territory. That's usually what I'm using. So now with full reverb, full delay, maybe like I would use it in a part. So from the green side, I have the ability to stack them both. I set it up with the Midi baby, and so I'll just show you real quick what that progression of gain sounds like from clean to blue to green to blue and green stacked. So here is that. Blue side. Green side. And now blue and green stacked. So you can hear it just gets gainier and gainier, but I mentioned this in the video where I went over the protein specifically. What I really like is that with the blue side, it's very clear, and with the green side, it's a lot more gainy. And when I combine them together, I feel like I have the best of both worlds, where I have the nice hair, the nice grit from the green side, but I get that clarity from the blue side. So if an occasion calls for it, where I really need that, I would stack it. So from the protein, we move towards the Nero, and that is my heaviest gain that I have. And really, I'm using that for solo territory. If there's a big riff or something where it just needs to be full out, that's what I'm using it for. So here's what that sounds like. There are big lead lines in certain songs that call for that, and so here's what that sounds like with reverb and delay if I had to do a really big line. So after that, we move into modulation, and that is the H90. I haven't even scratched the surface of what that can do. Every time I turn it on, there's just so much to explore, so much inspiration in terms of sound, but that's the point. That's why I got it, and I'm still loving it. But I do have some go-to sounds that I wanted to set up to cover some of the more basic sounds that we might hear in songs. So starting with a vibrato type of a sound, I'll use that for maybe enhancing some lines that are pretty stagnant, or maybe I've played hundreds of times and just want to give it a little extra. Vibrato's pretty much my favorite modulation sounds, and so anytime I can use it, I like to, if it makes sense for the part. So here's an example of what that could sound like. After that, I have a tremolo, and so that, unlike lead lines, I like to use more for chords. Again, whenever maybe a chord progression that feels pretty stagnant or repetitive, giving it some tremolo, giving it some movement within the context of a band and a song for me, just really can make a simple progression that much better. So here's an example of what that could sound like. After that, I have a chorus, and that one is more if a song calls for it. Chorus is not usually a sound that I'm reaching for. Again, that might be vibrato since it's my favorite, but if a part calls for it, then definitely I wanted to have a chorus set up, and I'll just kind of modify it depending on what the song calls for. So here's an example of what that could sound like. Lastly, on my go-to sounds is one that really doesn't get much time is auto wah. Now, in the worship genre, we're not doing a lot of auto wahing, you know, so doesn't really get much time, but I like to pull it out maybe for sound check or line check, or if we're just jamming to check levels or something like that, you know, have a little fun with the band. I like to have it in there. So here's an example of what that could sound like. So then after that, we go into my delays. And so the timeline needs no introduction, been around for forever, but my standard delays are 2. I use a quarter note and a dotted eighth. I kind of live on dotted eighth for most lead stuff, a lot of rhythm stuff, but sometimes it can feel a little bit too gallopy. And so if that's the case, especially if I'm playing with another guitar player who has delays of their own, and maybe the keys are doing some delays of their own, it can get a little too much in my opinion. So if that's the case, I'll stick with the quarter notes. It's a lot more on the beat, can kind of hide behind the timing of the song. But here is what those sound like. Lastly, we have the BigSky reverb, another pedal that's been around for forever, so it doesn't need an introduction, but I kind of have a tier system, 1 to 3, with 1 being the lightest reverb and then 3 being the heaviest, and those are my standard sounds. Here's an example of what that sounds like. So you can hear there's a kind of theme here that as I'm moving up in reverb stages, there's a little more mix, a little more decay, and it's just getting more floaty, more reverby as the stages go on. And so to recap, I'm using a light plate for stage 1, the bloom for stage 2, and then the clouds for stage 3, and any swell stuff that I might build from there, usually using the cloud algorithm. Now all of this is controlled with the 2 Midi controllers that you see on the board. I have the Midi baby set up to control the Morningstar ML5 switcher that's underneath the board, and all my overdrives, so the steel string, the Nero, and the protein are feeding into that ML5 switcher. And then I have the Midi baby 3 dedicated specifically just to control that. So anytime I need to change gain stages, no matter what combination of modulation, reverbs, and delay I have, the Midi baby's sole purpose is for that. And so I'm just using them kind of like I described, 1, 2, 3 with the switches on there. Now the Morningstar MC6 is controlling everything else, from pulling up presets on the H90 to different reverb delays and combinations that I might need for a certain part. I will program that into the MC6. And so then I use a banking system. The MC6 allows you to have different banks. And so you can see right here as I'm switching, I'll have the name, I'll have the BPMs, and then if there's a certain combination of pedals from reverb, delay, modulation that needs to be just for that song, I have its own dedicated bank to set that up. And then whenever I switch to the next song and I don't need that combination, I go back to my standard settings of being able to recall what I normally use. I'd say the biggest thing that the MC6 provides is the BPM, the tempo for every song. And I have those programmed on each bank. So as I'm switching banks to the next song, it's feeding that BPM tempo information to the pedals that need it and always keeping me locked in. The other thing to talk about is the board itself. So I previously had the Tempo Audio Trio 21 if I'm not mistaken. And incredible pedal board. I had that for a number of years and it served me well. But I wanted to look at something a little more slimmer, I guess, whenever I got my Pelican case, and the Trio 21 just did not fit in there. So I have, what you see here is the Creation Elevation 24. I hope I said that right. But it's a 24-inch by 12-inch pedal board that fits nicely into my Pelican case. And I wanted to purposely not get something super big. Of course, I could have gone with the bigger board, fit more overdrives, fit more modulation pedals, etc., right? We all want more stuff. But I wanted to purposely limit the size, again, to fit in my case, make it easier to travel with, but also to just make sure that I only had everything I need and nothing I don't. Also, what makes the Creation board really nice is the modules that they have. So I have the I/O module on the side that allows quarter jacks in and out. And so this allows me to feed the output from the Tone X1s and my amps to that module, and then I can come out of that module to a DI box, a front of house, whatever they need, or my interface at home and so forth. Really nice to be able to have that there without reaching underneath the board. And it also has an input for my guitar, so just go guitar straight to the side of the board. So it really keeps my connections all nicely compact on one side of the board. On the other side of the board, it has the power module, and so this just allows me to go to wherever I'm going, get my IAC cable, and simply plug it in. It even has an on and off switch that makes it really nice for when you're done. You don't have to unplug anything. You can just leave it where it is and just hit the switch and your board is off. So really nice to just have those convenient features without having to reach under board for anything like that. Also under the board, I have my power supplies, and so I'm using the Strymon Zuma in combination with the Strymon Ojai. Between these, I have some power hungry pedals, as you can see on the board. Never had any issues with power. Those two together give me more than enough that I need, and again, just never had any issue. Super clean, reliable power, really love it. I mentioned this before, but I have the Morningstar ML5 switcher underneath, and that's just where my overdrive pedals are coming in. Since they're not MIDI controllable, having the ML5 switcher with the MIDI baby on top of the board allows me to control any analog pedal that I run into there. So that's been really nice to be able to do that. Lastly, all the audio cables that you see on the board are the Ernie Ball flats. I have had those for a really long time and never had one fail on me. Wood custom cables and cut to length, all that look nice, sure, but honestly, as long as they're functioning, I'm never looking underneath my board once I have it set up. So it may not look the cleanest, but it doesn't really bother me since I never really see it. That's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.